UFL dropped their core gameplay mechanics part 2 Journey episode earlier today, and I've watched it and I've got some things to say about it, just like I did with part 1, so let's get into it. Now, during this gameplay mechanics part 2 episode of the UFL Journey, we have a more relaxed and personal style video from the devs. There's a little bit more like interplay between the guys in the dev team, poking fun and making jokes with each other. It is kind of a weird style, that the way that they're choosing to do this. The guy presenting it, he asks questions that the devs I think sometimes don't like, but I think that's quite good for more casual gamers to see. And the devs give like very technical answers, and he kind of calls them out on it a few times. So a lot of the focus on this episode was on goalkeeping animations. They have said that the animation system is due to be updated. I actually felt, I don't know if this was a placebo effect or something, but during this I actually felt this is the most I've liked the way that the game looked. Certainly when they got onto the other aspect that they mainly talked about in this, which was the flicks or the skills system. They called it flicks. I think that's kind of like a translation thing. But yeah, the skills that they showed off looked pretty smooth actually. But in terms of the goalkeeping, they discussed like all the different ways that their animation system has to kick in, depending on like the height of the ball and the position of the striker and things like that. And they addressed some of the criticism that in one of the gameplay videos, people in the comments said that it looked impossible to score, and they actually addressed this on screen by showing gameplay of players scoring against goalkeepers, so I thought they addressed that quite well. So yeah, getting on to the flicks or skills as I'm gonna call it, they showed off the rainbow flicker game, which looked pretty decent. They showed off like the Marseille turn, and they showed off like a double touch as well, and I thought all of these actually looked really smooth and implemented really well into the gameplay. Now, all of the players that they were using in the tech build could do any of the skills, but they did say that would be refined when release comes along. So obviously like centre backs aren't going to be able to pull off as many skills as your more flair players. But yeah, I was actually quite impressed with this and thought it looked fairly decent for UFL. I did think there was kind of another like negative angle to some of the things that they were saying. One of the devs said that he was worried about the way the reaction was going to be when the game came out, and whether or not people would call it a mobile game. And I felt like that was quite a negative thing, but also like an honest thing to say. But then he did say that they don't want the game to come out with any bugs or glitches, because if it comes out with bugs or glitches, people are going to turn away from the game straight away. And that's something that we've spoke about a lot here on Welcome to Gaming, with games being released and then needing day one patches and patches weeks after launch. The cricket franchise that I play here on the channel is a big example of that, and something that we've been discussing in videos for that recently is whether or not the game is going to need a lot of patches. And the devs here, they seem to suggest that UFL, they're going to try and get it out working from launch. Now, of course, every development team will state that, and then that might not happen, but it feels like they will try and take their time on this. Now, I do think that we are supposed to be seeing a playable version of the game sometime this year, but I wouldn't be opposed to them putting it back if they felt that the game wasn't ready. There was a lot of instances of the dev team stating that things weren't ready to be shown, things weren't in the build, and that is a little disappointing because you're showing core gameplay and you kind of think, well, why are you showing us this if you don't have it implemented? Things like free kicks are very basic at the moment, and corners as well, they were stating. They actually said it's going to be kind of a secondary thing that they're going to think about, which I'm not so sure how that will play for us as users, because, you know, set pieces are a big part of the game of football. Lots of goals are scored from set pieces, so I hope that they don't sort of skim over set pieces too much. But yeah, lots of things weren't available to be shown, which, as I say, is a little bit disappointing when you are showing us a gameplay video. That also kind of leads me to think, well, the game's obviously not ready or anywhere near ready to be launched. The amount of things that they were saying that aren't ready to be shown, it seems like this game is actually further away from being in our hands than was suggested. I'm sure they said they wanted it to be out for 2023. I don't think I'm crazy for thinking that. Do let me know in the comments below if that was mentioned, because I think it was. And of course, we're already heading towards summer of 2023. I don't know how long ago these episodes were filmed, but you would think that they were fairly recently done. So is it a case that we'll see this launched in the traditional window when sports games or football games are launched, more towards that September, October, November time? That gives them a few more months of development. Personally, I think it may get knocked back again. We may have to wait a little bit longer, judging just on from what they were saying in this video, from the amount of things missing in the game. I think we might be waiting just a little bit longer for UFL. But yeah, as I say, the actual gameplay in this one, like as I said earlier, I don't know if this is a placebo effect or if it was just the animations of the flicks, the skills. That looked smoother than what we've seen before. There were a few weird moments with the goalkeepers snapping out to the ball and catching it early on in the video that I saw, and I'll drop an example of that in what I mean. But yeah, the skills, they looked pretty good, and that's the best example of UFL that I've seen so far from a gameplay point. So I want to know what you guys thought of this part 2 of the core gameplay mechanics from the UFL Journey on YouTube. How are you feeling now, having seen the second part of this episode? What are your thoughts on the skills that we saw and how they were implemented? Did they look pretty smooth? Another thing to talk about actually with that was there was some input lag or some input delay or some input bug that they were discussing, of course, so they couldn't fully show off exactly how that worked, but obviously those sorts of things will be ironed out for the release. Let me know what you thought on the goalkeeping animations as well in this episode. I want to hear what you guys are thinking. Of course, we've seen the goalkeeping gameplay video a while back, and then we've seen this now. Do you think that there's been an evolution and an improvement there? But I do think that the devs, they are being very honest and they are being very open, and I think probably to their detriment sometimes. You know, they're ragging on each other's way that they're making the game sometimes, and saying, you know, laughing at things not being completed and stuff. And I don't know if that comes off as unprofessional or more like in tune with gamers. I'm not quite sure. I do think as well, with this series having to be translated, of course, as we mentioned, a lot of the development team, not English speaking, so the videos are translated, and I don't know if sometimes the translation kind of gives it that disconnect from what they're actually trying to say. Let me know what you think about that. I don't know if I'm just being a weird British bloke and thinking that, or if that comes across that way as well for other English speaking people. Well, thank you for watching this video on UFL. Let me know, as I say, what you think. If you're still hyped for UFL, in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and maybe subscribe to the channel, because there'll be more UFL videos to come, as well as the other football games that I cover here on the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.